Perhaps audacious, it's bold, to say the least, but why so audacious and why so bold? Well, there have been many attempts to unify science and religion, but this has never been successfully done, at least if it has, I'm not aware of it. And there have been some attempts to unify science and economics, and the man who came closest in the 20th century is one of my three most important intellectual antecedents. You recognize him all as Professor Ludwig von Mises. In the science of human action, known to many of you in this room, von Mises illustrates the matchless efficacy of the free exchange of tangible wealth in the marketplace. The second important antecedent of my development of win-win theory, the science of social causation, was Professor Andrew J. Galambos, who founded the Free Enterprise Institute in Los Angeles. Galambos gave cogent expositions on scientific epistemology and on the social technology of securing tangible and intangible wealth through proprietary ventures. The whole key was through proprietary ventures, profit-seeking ventures. The third antecedent, many of you will recognize, is Robert Lefebvre, founded the Freedom School in Colorado, where he gave original commentary to his students on maximizing social freedom. Now, von Mises, Galambos, and Lefebvre did not always agree on how to build what we might call a free society. They had many disagreements. And in my own case, I take an entirely different approach to building freedom than did von Mises, Galambos, and Lefebvre. As I said, I call that approach win-win theory, or the science of social causation. And before continuing with the subject of this lecture, namely unifying science, religion, and economics, at least two questions should be raised. One, can science, religion, and economics ever be unified? And two, if they can, why bother? Well, the reason to consider unifying them is not obvious. Let me ask you this question. Since the emergence of civilization 10 to 12,000 years ago, what have been the most destructive and catastrophic inventions of human ingenuity? Well, if we had time, I would invite each one of you to write down your answer, read your answer in front of everyone in the room. However, in a mere 45-minute lecture, we don't have time for that, therefore I will give you my answer. Here are the most destructive, catastrophic inventions of the human mind. There are two with no close third. The first is the invention of institutionalized religion. And the second you can figure out from the first. You already have what the second is. The invention of institutionalized government. Now, if you've read only a little world history, you know that institutionalized religions have been responsible for murder, torture, imprisonment, persecution of millions upon millions of totally innocent people who never harmed anyone. If you read a little more history, you find that institutionalized governments have been responsible for the murder, torture, imprisonment, persecution of millions upon millions of innocent people who also never harmed anyone. Now, to be sure, some may argue, well, so what? That's a common response. So what? Organized murder, torture, and every kind of violence has been incited by various institutions of religion and government for thousands of years. So why worry about it now? Why worry, especially since there is probably nothing we can do about it? Right? What do you think? Write me a lecture. Write me an essay on that question. As far as the survival of civilization and our human species goes, Unless you were one of the millions of victims of such violence who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, you didn't have to worry about the destruction of civilization and the extinction of our species. That is, you didn't have to worry about it at all until quite recently. And quite recently is what year? 1945 and the end of World War II. Many of you were alive at the time. Every literate person knows that 1945 marked the entrance of the nuclear age and the beginning of a world for the very first time where human populations were threatened by the real use of weapons of mass destruction. Now, how serious is this crisis? Well, one of our most famed scientists, you all recognize immediately, gave us this warning. He said, "Life on Earth is at the ever-increasing risk of being wiped out by a disaster, such as sudden global nuclear war, a genetically engineered virus, or other dangers we have not yet thought of." All right, is Hawking a rabid extremist? A naive alarmist? What do you think? I don't think so. Even if you are knowledgeable of the magnitude of the crisis, the danger may be out of sight, and therefore out of mind. You know, India and Pakistan, for example, have a long history of mutual hostility. Hindus of India, Muslims of Pakistan have already engaged in 3 bloody wars. The first of these wars featured the largest and deadliest tank battle since World War II, and they had some big ones in World War II. As avid warriors, they take their warning seriously, which now include Indo-Pakistan War I of 1965, Indo-Pakistan War II of 1971, Indo-Pakistan War III of 1999. All right, well, what sacred paradigm spurs these holy wars between Muslims of Pakistan and Hindus of India? The firmness of their faith braces their devout belief in the practice of what I call win-lose religion. For example, for Muslims to gain, Hindus must be forced to lose. And for Hindus to gain, Muslims must be forced to lose. Now, to be sure, India and Pakistan, they're a long way from California. Many would think, well, you know, whether or not they go to war, it's their problem, not ours. Or is it our problem? Well, thus far, in their win-lose religions, they've only incited conventional conflicts, causing the usual carnage of ancient and modern warfare. But if Muslims and Hindus ever decide that it's time to unlock the fury of their unconventional weapons, these lethal weapons of nuclear destruction, if they use these to wage a holy and glorious 4th Indo-Pakistan War, the collateral damage could surpass all conflicts in human history. If they incinerate themselves by launching their own cache of 50 to 60 nuclear warheads at each other, those far from the fury may cry, well, what a tragedy, too bad for them, but unfortunately we are nowhere near the conflict. Well, if you know any people with such a Pollyanna mentality, wish them luck. Wherever they may be, there may be no safe harbor. Now, most of you have never been to either India or Pakistan. I haven't. As we know, they're all on the other side of the world. But even if you live in San Diego County, Orange County, Los Angeles County, you might as well be at ground zero. Here's why. If there should ever be an Indo-Pakistan War 4, we have a potential for a catastrophe that even if you live in far-off California, and your whole family could become mortal statistics. Americans Alan Robach, professor of climatology at Rutgers University, and Owen Toon, chair of oceanic and atmospheric sciences, University of Colorado at Boulder, and their colleagues colleagues in research have reached this rather grim conclusion. New analysis revealed that a conflict between India and Pakistan, in which 100 nuclear bombs were dropped on cities and industrial areas, only 0.4% of the world's more than 25,000 warheads would produce enough smoke to cripple global agriculture. A regional war could cause widespread loss of life, even in countries far away from the conflict. In short, these scientists have concluded, in their own words, that a limited regional nuclear war could blot out the sun. That's serious, although you don't have to be a physicist to know that's serious, right? It would probably starve much, if not all, of the human race would die of starvation. And of course, all kinds of civil unrest before they died, perhaps. With deadly implications, it turns out that launching less than 0.5% of existing nuclear arms in some minor regional war may be enough to induce nuclear winter. With nuclear winter, it's all over. As destructive as nuclear and chemical weapons may be, and even more frightening weapons wait in the wings, weapons of biological warfare could trigger a global pandemic, a worldwide plague that could wipe out humans faster than they could procreate. And so the crisis for civilization in our human species has been rising since 1945. But wait a minute. What has this got to do with unifying economics, religion? What's this got to do with the crisis? I'll get to that in a moment. First, I have to identify, in a few words, the underlying causes of the crisis. It has to do with the quality of world education. There's a crisis in education. It is so severe that never makes the evening news. We are on the threshold of destroying both civilization and our species due entirely to one decisive failure. One failure. Here it is in a sentence. The fundamental cause of the crisis of human survival is the miseducation of the educated classes. Miseducation comes in three main arenas of education. Miseducation on which physical causes lead to which physical effects. Miseducation on which biological causes lead to which biological effects. And miseducation on which social causes lead to which social effects. The most social destruction follows widespread miseducation on which social causes lead to which social effects. All right, how serious is the worldwide problem of widespread miseducation? Miseducation of the educated classes is the root cause of world war, world poverty, and world servitude. You might say, but other than that, what's the problem? Well, that's pretty serious. And that's a rather bold claim at the same time. To substantiate this claim, it's important to precisely define the key term, miseducation. Whenever anyone claims to have a science in any field of knowledge, to have a science, and not a pseudoscience, the science must be founded on semantic precision. Thus, win-win theory is a science founded on semantic precision. Therefore, here's a precise definition of miseducation. Miseducation is any increase in any individual's misunderstanding of which physical, biological, and social causes lead to which physical, biological, and social effects. In defining miseducation, there's a corollary that follows. It's the definition of education, which has the potential to revolutionize education from kindergarten to graduate school, wherever it is applied as the central theme of education. And so education is any increase in any individual's understanding of which physical, biological, and social causes lead to which physical, biological, and social effects. Now, in today's so-called schools of higher learning, especially outside the physical and biological sciences, students are largely being they're getting a miseducation, they're gaining a miseducation on which social causes lead to which social effects. This travesty of education cannot continue indefinitely, at least not after the advent of the nuclear age. Either the world's colleges and universities will supersede the downside of miseducation with the upside of education, or the human race will perish from self-extinction, leading to self-extinction. Now, I don't know about you, but although it's often embarrassing for me to be classified with other Homo sapiens, nonetheless, it would seem to be an unfortunate loss if we should become extinct through the calamities of institutionalized stupidity. If we're going to unify science with economics and religion, we better have a clear understanding of the nature of science. This means it should also be precisely defined. Science is the observational, a posteriori method of identifying and verifying the causes of physical, biological, and social effects. In contrast, if we want to avoid being caught up in the misadventures of pseudoscience, we had better understand what pseudoscience is. Pseudoscience is the imaginary, a priori method of determining the causes of physical, biological, and social effects in the name of science. In the name of science. In the end, you'll find there's only two approaches to understanding cause and effect. Take your pick. There's imagination of causality or observation of causality. That's it. In the physical sciences, through the work of Galileo, Newton, and others, imagination of physical causality has been superseded by observation of physical causality. In the biological sciences, through the work of Pasteur, Darwin, Mendel, and others, imagination of biological causality has been superseded by observation of biological causality. And one of the aims of win-win theory in the science of social causation is to play a role in superseding the imagination of social causality with observation of social causality. You will find the most profound paradigm shift in human history is the ongoing shift away from reliance on imagination of causality toward reliance on observation of causality. Now, I've defined science, which is rarely defined by anyone, including scientists. In a world where pseudoscience is often masquerading as science itself, it is critical to draw a precise line of demarcation between science and pseudoscience. I will now define economics. Like economics, it comes in two brands. I will differentiate between win-win economics and win-lose economics. Win-win economics is the a posteriori, in other words, after observation, science of maximizing the causes of prosperity and minimizing the causes of poverty through voluntary exchange. Once you have a precise definition of win-win economics, it's easy to define win-lose economics. Win-lose economics is the a priori or before observation pseudoscience that claims to maximize the causes of prosperity and minimize the causes of poverty through institutionalized involuntary exchange at gunpoint. Of course, all Marxian economics is win-lose economics at gunpoint. So-called Keynesian economics is just a variation on the Marxian theme. All interventionist economics, they are all win-lose economics at gunpoint. Incidentally, you could observe this. If you have to impose something upon someone with a gun, what does that mean? He doesn't want it. It's just observable. If he really wants it, he will go after it. Nothing will stop. He's going to go get that. I want that. You don't have to stick a gun in his face. And you only stick a gun in someone's face to impose your will on them if you don't know what you're doing. Finally, in unifying science, economics, and religion, we have to define religion. Religion is any a priori belief system on divine deities and their commands to humans on what to believe and how to act. All right, now that I've defined science, economics, and religion, can they somehow be unified, and why bother? Do they have anything in common that could lay a foundation for unification? This is a formidable problem. It is indeed formidable. Science is an observational, a posteriori discipline. In sharp contrast, religion is an imaginary, a priori discipline. Science claims to discover causality through observation. Religion claims to know causality through imagination without observation. Now, to solve this incompatibility between science and religion, this question can be asked. Namely, is there a central element of all major religions, which is a fundamental religious principle that, when applied by the faithful, can be observed and verified to foster the social effects that nearly everyone wants, namely world peace, prosperity, and freedom? Who doesn't want this? Nearly everybody. Not all, but nearly everybody. On the premise that most people prefer peace over war, prosperity over poverty, freedom over servitude, here is the question. Is there a religious principle that we can observe to bring these lofty aims to fruition when such a religious principle is practiced by believers and non-believers as well? Well, historians of religion have they've long noted a rule of conduct that is common to all religion. From the time you were a child, you've heard of this rule, known in our time as the Golden Rule. Now, the idea of the Golden Rule is an old idea. It is a very old idea indeed. The Persian religious teacher Zoroaster of Babylonia, which is now Iraq and Iran, defined one of the earliest examples of the Golden Rule. Zoroaster also envisioned the ongoing battle between good and evil. This was some 6 centuries before the birth of Jesus and the founding of Christianity by his apostles Peter and Paul of Tarsus. From 600 BC, some 2,600 years ago, we have the Zoroastrian Golden Rule. Whatever is disagreeable to yourself, do not do unto others. A century later, 25 centuries ago, we have the Hindu Golden Rule. This is the sum of duty. Do not unto others which would cause you pain if done to you. In the same century, we have the Buddhist Golden Rule. Hurt not others in ways that you yourself would find hurtful. Also in the same century, the Confucian Golden Rule. Is there one maxim which ought to be acted upon throughout one's whole life? Surely it is a maxim of loving kindness. Do not unto others what you would not have them do unto you. Again, in the same century, which is 25 centuries ago, Lao Tzu gave us the Taoist golden rule. Regard your neighbor's gain as your own gain, and your neighbor's loss as your own loss. 5 centuries later, one of the most famous religious leaders in Jewish history, Palestinian Rabbi Hillel, gave us the Judaic golden rule: what is hateful to you, do not to your fellow men. That is the entire law. All the rest is commentary. And so Hillel says, here's the entire rule of behavior in one sentence. The entire law. The Jewish people call that the Torah. The entire law. That's the first 5 books of the Old Testament, which most of you read, whether you're Jewish or not. All of these 5 books, they're merely commentary on how to apply the Judaic golden rule, which says, what is hateful to you, do not to your fellow man. Nearly a century later, we have the Christian golden rule. So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophets. And again, he's echoing. Essentially, it sums up the laws of Moses, the first 5 books of the Old Testament. 12 centuries after the Christian golden rule, we have the Islamic golden rule. No one of you is a believer until he desires for his brother that which he desires for himself. All right, the ancient golden rules, as an overarching code of ethics for all humans, share a common thing. They directly discourage win-lose behavior while indirectly encouraging win-win behavior. And so due to its, I think, priceless social value, this rule of rules for human behavior is truly golden. Now, to go beyond a general acceptance of the golden rule toward the general practice of the golden rule. Acceptance is not quite the same as practice, is it? What do we have to do? We have to build an ironclad case that must be made for the universal equity, utility, and morality of the golden rule. To begin an effective and lasting trend away from the miseries of war, poverty, and servitude toward the blessings of peace, prosperity, and freedom, the overwhelming benefits of following the golden rule without compromise must be revealed and, most importantly, verified. That's what science does. It verifies truth, causality. And especially, this must be shown to respected people with good minds and good educations, because these people wield the greatest social influence in every modern society. Now, ladies and gentlemen, all of these key golden rules can be generalized as a central rule for human behavior, regardless of one's ethnicity, culture, status, gender. Here's a precise definition of the golden rule principle. Do not seize wealth and freedom from others as you would have them not seize your wealth and freedom. Seize your wealth and freedom involves involuntary exchange, which is win-lose exchange. The golden rule principle demands avoidance of all win-lose exchange in human affairs. If you avoid win-lose exchange, what's left? The only other human action available is, guess what? Win-win exchange, which can be also, in the science of social causation, precisely defined. Win-win exchange is the act of gaining through the gain of others without gaining through their loss by force or fraud. Now, wherever there is win-win exchange, the social effects can be predicted by win-win theory through operation of the principle of win-win exchange. Here's that principle of win-win exchange. Win-win exchange creates wealth that expands freedom